Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on your own screen in this lovely world. We welcome you and we are grateful that you are joining us and not looking for something else in your favorite show or TV or whatever you could do, or that you have taken a break to join us. Very well decision. Very nice. Today you have the pleasure to meet Nicole Leffer. She's a friendly and experienced marketing leader who loves helping teams harness the power of AI. With over 3.5 years of hands-on experience, she trains marketeers to use generative AI tools to boost effectiveness, efficiency, and results. Nicole's approachable training sessions and online courses make it easy for teams at any stage of AI adoption to achieve their marketing and revenue goals. That is the promise. She passionately is about making AI accessible and beneficial for everyone. So let's jump in our conversation and welcome Nicole.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here today.
Oh, well, let's see whether we can get changed.
Well, that is not my role. So I was really driven by curiosity.
Yeah.
Where would you, in your own words, add something to the introduction? And where is your up-to-date mission right now with your organization, with your company?
Yeah. So really the short version of what I do is I go in and I partner with chief marketing officers or other marketing leaders to help them train and upskill their teams on the skills that they need to make the most of generative AI tools within their marketing. And I also have an online course for marketers who maybe their team doesn't bring me in. I do have some whole entire teams that take the course too, but all of the skills you need to really leverage the AI technology. And my mission really is to just help as many marketers as possible build these skills and the understanding of how to use this technology in their everyday work as a partner in their work. Because the way that I view this, and I think it's becoming a pretty well-known thing, AI is the future. Like there's no going back. This cat is out of the bag. AI is here. It is not going anywhere. And it is now a skill you are expected to have. And if you do not have this skill, at some point, you're not going to be employable. Right? Like, so I'm not saying you're not going to, like, that AI is going to take all of the jobs of the people who learn how to use AI. But if you refuse to use AI, that's going to be like you refuse to use email or you refuse to use the internet, you know, in the 90s, 1990s. So my mission is really to help as many people learn these skills as possible, because especially in marketing, it is so vital. And that's going to help give people long-term job stability and, you know, employability. So it's really, even though I'm working with companies and that is like where I'm getting paid most of the time, my personal mission and my personal drive is to help as many individual people as possible, because it really helps protect their futures.
Now I lost count on one particular word. Skills. What are those skills that are needed?
So there's a lot. It's like, you know, probably like we don't have enough time just in this session to get into all of them, but it's a lot of things like, how do you actually communicate with AI to get the results that you want? How do you actually, like, what do you need to put into it to get out the right things? Because it's not like we're just born knowing how to use an AI, right? Like this is brand new technology. We're all learning it as we go. So how do you communicate? What is the different functionality? What is the tool that you're using capable of? And what is it not capable of? So all of these pieces, and how do you take the communications, the features, the functionality, and stack those things together to be able to get it to do things that are going to make you really excel in your own job?
So for my own understanding, if you're now saying AI, you mean generative AI?
Yes.
Not what we knew as AI the other day when it was about predictions and
Right. There's,
this stuff.
there's two types of AI really. There's the AI that is that like predictive analytics, that side of things. As far as like, I'm going to look at deep amounts of data and make prediction, like mathematical calculation prediction off of that. That is not my space at all. I am more in the side where the AI is generating for you and doing like kind of what we would think of as human thinking work and helping you with that. It's creating something and then you're using that to work in your work. Now, is there an element of analysis and all of that in generative AI? Absolutely. Because the AI tools at this point are like, thinking, processing, going through stuff. They can do things like help with strategy, not just like I wrote a blog post, like a lot of people are thinking is, where this is. It's so much further beyond that at this point. But it really is different than like, let me just give you huge databases and you point out like where somebody's going to behave in the future. That's not me at all.
So now focusing on the generative stuff, I call it stuff now.
Yeah. Right. It's the good word.
What are the main use cases that you see, especially pertaining to marketing/advertising in particular?
So I would say there's not actually a main use case. And I think that this is one of the things we've got to start getting out of the mindset of thinking about things in terms of use cases, because it's similar to saying, what's the use case for the internet? Or what's the use case for a Word document or for email, right? Like we use it for so many different things that it's not like there's just one thing or another. Now, the way I look at it is how can I take my existing workflow and augment it with AI rather than like, what is the use for it? But when that comes to marketing and advertising, I mean, marketing is such a huge tent, right? Like, so let's maybe focus in, since we're supposed to be talking about advertising, uses around advertising can be everything from building out the strategy, right? Like sitting down and going, this is the audience I have. This is what we're selling. This is what we're trying to accomplish. These are the channels. Help me build out the strategy, because these tools can help you think through that and do all of that strategic work. It can be researching the audience, right? Like, what do you not know about your persona? You could be getting in there and doing really deep dives into understanding who is the person you're talking to, what are their interests, what resonates with them, all of that. And then it can actually get in beyond the research, beyond the strategy. You can be in there creating copy, creating A/B test variations. If you need creative that's images, it can help you with that. If you need video, it can help you with that. It can do AI voiceovers for your videos. I mean, it's really gotten to this point, like anything you need to create for the ads themselves, you can also be using AI assistants. Now, note I said assistants. I'm not saying just give it to the AI and let it run wild. You want to be a part of that process, but it can help you with all of that ideating, creating the assets, helping you determine which ones are potentially likely to work really well for you. And then while I said I don't do the predictive analytics in the way of like giving you tons and tons of data, what you can do with even a tool like ChatGPT is take all of that you've created, like, maybe 50 variations of an ad because you've done it really quickly with AI to help you build this out. You have detailed persona research. You can give all of that to ChatGPT and have it run like a virtual focus group to help you predict which of these ads you should be using for your A/B test, to just kind of help narrow it down. So there's a lot of different ways that you can start leveraging this within advertising as well.
You just now used a highly interesting word, which I'd like to dig in a little, because I'm probably doing another show on Friday with my friend John Reed. Creativity.
Yeah.
Who is creative? The wetware in front of the computer, or the software within the computer?
Both. I think there's so your creativity and how you use the software is going to determine how creative the software is able to be. right? So like what you put into it, the most creative thing I've ever done in my entire career, and I've worked creatively my entire career. The most creative thing I've ever done is try to figure out how to get AI to do really cool stuff. Right? Like the creativity that goes into the prompting, the figuring it out, like all of it, it's like suddenly the AI is just a tool to bring your creative vision to life. And also, the AI is getting so much smarter, and with that intelligence, it's also becoming more creative. Now, it may not be creative in the same way we think of creativity, but it is bringing creativity to life one way or another. So you might be really creative in how you prompt it, and that brings a new form of creativity into the world. And so it's kind of this hybrid mix of like having a very creative partner.
How do you define creativity? Because when it comes to generative AI, I often tend to change the generative to derivative AI, because that's ultimately what that stuff is doing. It's just derive something.
So are you. What's the difference? You have your entire life experience, right? So like everyone you've talked to, every experience you've had has gone into your brain. And then when you make something new, you're making connections between all of the things you know, and you're putting that out into the world. You also are derivative. Your creativity is also derivative. It's actually almost the exact same thing with the AI. It's just brought in massive amounts of data. It's making connections between that data and it's bringing it out to the world. Now, if you're to look at some of the not as intelligent models that are a little bit older, and by older in AI terms, I mean like 3 weeks. Like old in AI is not the same as old in any other sphere. 2 months old, that's like ancient, right? But if you look at some, maybe I'm talking a little further back than that, but you look at some of these models that came out 6 months, a year, 2 years ago, those models might not have the same capacity to be more creative in the way that we think of creativity. But the models that are coming out now, like the ones that have been these last few weeks, like month or two, like they have the capacity to draw all of these connections between all different kinds of concepts and ideas, just like you do, and bring something completely new into the world. And I know that scares the daylights out of people, but like it is just where this technology is. It can pull things. Is it derivative to a degree, but no differently than you are? Right? Like it's really the same as it's taking all of this information and it's able to go, ooh, this over here and this over here, and ooh, let's put that together and mix it up, and now we got that. And so that's some of your role, is to be the one to say, put this and this and this together and mix it up and give me the new thing. That's where your creativity comes into play.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love it, because I'm wondering that I didn't hear a chuckle out of Ralph's screen from Ralph's side, because you're the first one ever to turn my duck argument against me.
Well, I didn't want to go for the duck argument. I saw the perspective vividly as you describe it, that you use AIs in its co-working skills, and that you found out by your experience and by being curious on the road and on the journey, that the models which are around there deliver to your needs. Now I'm curious in the area, as you described, the crap 2 years old, which was limited in its knowledge, is no longer the fun factor to a certain degree. So I was curious and honestly asking which tools you utilize and recommend for the different tasks in the marketing role, or do you prefer the generic approach? I do everything with ChatGPT, for instance.
So one thing I want to be clear, like the tools, even like the models, even a year or two ago, they had a lot of knowledge. It's not that, it's the ability to think through that knowledge and put like the intelligence level. It was more like, you know, maybe a high school kid having that knowledge versus a PhD student or a top expert in a field having that knowledge and what they're going to be able to do with it. But that aside, tools, let's see. So my own perspective is that before you start going for all different tools for all different kinds of use cases, you get really good and understand a core tool, a foundational tool inside out. It's what you're calling generic. I would call it anything but generic. I would just call it versatile and fully functional. But understanding whether that there's a few options you could go with, and some people like to combine them, but I would just pick one to start with and get really, really good with. ChatGPT is my personal go-to. It would be my number one choice if you could pick any tool you want. And I am not talking about free ChatGPT, at the very least a paid account. Like there's different levels of paid account, but whether that's the $20 a month or $200 a month, I would get yourself a paid ChatGPT account.
What are the differences there?
Intelligence is the biggest. So, and how much access to intelligence you have. So for the most part, like most of the functionality is very similar between like a Plus account or a Teams account, which are $20 to $30 a month, the Teams being a business account, the Plus being a personal. The $200 a month pro accounts, and I'm almost hesitant to say because like it changes by the hour what they add. I mean, like for all I know, there's something new in there by the time we get off this call. But you get unlimited access to some of the reasoning models that are really smart and able to like really deeply think through things. So if you're doing a lot of high level reasoning and you'd be maxing out what you can do in a $20 or $30 a month account, for certain people, it's useful to have that higher level tier. There's also a tool called Deep Research that is in the Pro accounts. And it's also in the Plus and the Teams account. They just rolled it out. It was in Pro first, and then they rolled it out. But Deep Research essentially lets the AI, you put in a prompt, it goes out, it spends about anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour doing research, deep research on a topic, and then comes back and writes you a report. It's absolutely mind-blowing and completely like the use and the value of it is astronomical. You get 10 of those a month in like the $20 a month accounts. You get 120 of them a month in the $200 account. So it's just the amount of access to the top level research. And it gets stuff sooner. You get like GPT 4.5 just came out last week. I think actually it's coming into other accounts today. I think I might have seen something of people saying it's starting to roll into their Plus accounts, but we got it first in Pro. And then there's the operator agent, which is a little bit like it can actually go out and use computers for you. Very beta, right? It's not perfect, but you can use that in the Pro account. So there's things you can do. Most people, the $20, $30 a month Plus or Teams account is gonna be more than enough. If you're like really deep, I would get that Pro account. But that said, either ChatGPT, there's a one called Claude, Google Gemini. Those are the big three. I would pick one of those three. If you're not allowed to have one of those three, but your company allows Microsoft Copilot, you could put that in the same category as a core tool. Whichever one you have, learn everything it can do, learn how to communicate with it, learn how to write really good prompts, learn its functionality, learn all of that. And because you can mold it into an expert in literally anything. It is an expert in literally anything. You just have to narrow its focus.
And bingo, here we are, such as how do I learn to do it properly?
So if you have ChatGPT, I have a really good course on that. It's about 7.5 hours long of content. But forget my course. Experimentation is honestly the biggest thing, right? Like there's a million people out there who are going to give you have to do it this way kind of tips with using these tools. And the vast majority of them, one, have no idea what they're even talking about. They're just parroting other people or they're just sharing what their experimentation has seen. I don't know a lot of people posting that stuff that do the things like I read AI research papers all the time, or AI helps me read AI research papers all the time so that I can identify the ones I need to read. And so it's like actually genuinely studied, but vast majority of stuff you're seeing online is not people that are at the level where it is a full-time job plus just to genuinely be up to date. So if somebody has another job, like if you have a real job, not like me, like where this is my real job, but if you have another job that you're just using AI for, there's no universe where you actually are an expert in it. It's just impossible because it moves so fast. And so you've got to take, not to say you don't read and learn what other people are saying, but take it with a grain of salt and use it as a jumping off point to experiment. Don't take it as gospel of how it has to be. Even someone like me, who this is all I do, and I do read the research papers and I'm really up to date, we're all still learning. So you got to take it as a jumping off point to experiment. So the biggest thing is learn from what other people have said, then test it. And if we're talking people who are in marketing, advertising, you should be used to A/B testing. A/B test what you're doing in the tool. Try the strategy versus not the strategy, like different things. And that's going to help you get much, much better at using it. But also don't get overwhelmed. Like the biggest thing is the more you personally use it, the more you're going to understand how to use it. If you don't use it, you're never going to understand it. You could read theory all day, but until you actually do the theory, you're not going to get anything out of learning how to use the tech. So experiment.
I want to play.
Yeah, play.
Ideal profile.
It's fun. Come up with like, hey, this is what I'm working on. Let's see if I can get ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini to help me with this and how. And whatever you think the most that it could do is go further, right? So if you're like, it could write me the headlines, go, but wait, could it do the strategy? Like, let me try and just experiment with it and see what it comes back with. Experiment with asking it in different ways, see what it comes back with. At the end of the day, that's how you're going to get the most out of the tech.
So now, who has the value? Let's get back to advertisements. So we have seen, well, with the advent of email, that ads and whatever communications reached a point where the marginal price of the additional email is probably zero or very close to zero. Now compound that with the even further decreasing marginal price of having generated that stuff by some terminology and having the audiences increased, well, exponentially almost. With the exception that there's not an exponential number of people there, but
almost,
which results in you and I getting more irrelevant marketing stuff than ever. So my learning from that is that advertisers don't care a flying F about their quality, but the quantity. This is the only measure they seem to have. So what do I get wrong there? I know that I'm wrong there, but
I would say for the majority of that, like for the majority of marketing and advertising that's out there, you're completely right. I'm not going to argue with you that like most advertisers are on, most marketers. Well, I'm not going to say the marketers themselves, but like the culture around it is very much of like, how can I get the most out of it for my company? Right? Like, because that's the whole point. You're spending money. You need to get something back for the money. Now, the really smart, really good marketers that are doing the advertising understand that the way to get something back is not just what's in it for me. It's providing significant real value to whoever it is, meeting, like understanding who you're speaking to inside out, creating a strategy and a campaign and a plan that is speaking specifically to them and solving a problem for them, meeting them where they are and walking them through the process and helping solve their problem. That's what should be in it for the person seeing your marketing content and advertising content. Is that what is in it for the majority of them? No. But that's on the marketer. Like, that's on whoever is creating it. But if you are a marketer, an advertiser, your goal should be about understanding who you're talking to inside out and creating campaigns that speak directly to them, meet them where they are, and serve them, because the byproduct of serving them is going to be serving you.
Yeah, but you're saying should be, which is another indicator that it isn't. And if you are looking at an increasing proliferation of ad farms, so it means just server farms that distribute meaningless BS
They're not going to
content.
perform, right? So, like, if we're talking to people who are the marketers that are creating this stuff,
but why are they?
You can't control what everybody else is doing on that, but you can cut through the noise of what everybody else is doing by not doing that. So. Right? Like, that's gonna be, and it is annoying as all get out. I mean, like, I am getting inundated with poorly created, horrible AI content marketing. I mean, it's awful. And, like, not just advertising, but, like, have you been in the LinkedIn comments lately? It's like everybody's using AI to comment irrelevant self-promo. You're like, what is this even talking about in the LinkedIn comments? It's everything is getting inundated with AI. But when you're the person who, if you use the AI in an intelligent way, that is actually speaking to the right person, and you're a big part of that process, you're going to cut through the noise. Now, are you going to have a lot more competition? Yes, but your stuff is going to stand out because it's so easy to create awful bad advertising and awful bad marketing because of AI, that when you take the time and the energy to leverage these tools but to create good advertising and good content, meaning it does speak to your customers, it does solve their problems, it does meet them where they are and walk them through the process, you're going to come off like a company that really gets them, that they want to do business with. So it's almost potentially a competitive advantage if you do a good job, right? Like, just the fact that everybody else is doing such lousy, mass-produced garbage actually advantages those who are taking the time to do a good job.
Now you said almost and potentially. Why the qualifiers?
Because, I mean, it's... you still gotta, like, you can take the time to do a good job, but you actually have to do the good job. And you can't control what you can't control. Like, you can't control if people have just 100% tuned out email, right? Like, if they're just so over all of the inundated everything, you may do the most phenomenal email campaign, but it's not going to break through because they're just not opening it. So you probably are going to have to find some new channels and some new ways. But the creative, this is where the creativity comes in, right? Like, getting creative. Where do you meet your market? How do you meet them where they are? How do you break through that noise is going to make a really big difference.
That's where I just wanted to get into. So what I asked myself is whether it's actually worthwhile swimming against the stream, because if everybody does it, they can't be all wrong, right? This is the what often is referred to as common sense,
right?
So
and I don't know. I've worked in marketing for a long time, and I've seen, like, people all throw like a large numbers of people throwing a lot of bad strategies out there because somebody told them to, and they don't even know that they're throwing money away. And I'm not saying, like, it's like, it's gonna take a while for them to realize that they're throwing money away because they're trying to copy what other people are doing. And I don't think you could just assume just because everybody's sending really lousy email ads, spam, that's created really poorly with AI, that there's something good to it. I mean, maybe at some point there's a law of numbers, but I can't imagine that just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean that it actually works. It just means that everybody's bought into the idea that it could work. And that's not necessarily the same thing And sometimes
That
it
is,
takes companies with new stuff a while to realize they got hacked.
true, but it's the same argument as the CIOs back in the 80s had, or right now, changed the name. The CIO never got fired for choosing IBM. Means this leads to a strong, well, harmonization is probably not the right word, but
No.
basically everybody does the same way. So, and if everybody
Yeah.
most people, too many people are using the same tools, the same tool sets, the same way, there's inevitably very similar content that gets generated. So
Yeah.
how to avoid that? Using the
Don't.
very tools that are streamlined to harmonize this content, to
Don't.
create
May
instant
I add?
mediocrity.
May I add? If everybody is wearing the same school uniform, how do I differentiate by not being punished?
By dyeing
I
your
mean,
hair
Easy, the
blue.
shoes are usually not part of the school uniform, I know that.
Your haircut, your makeup, your jewelry. You know, you
Boys
do,
and makeup is an interesting one. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, you know, your bright blue eyeshadow, your mohawk, like whatever you do with your hair. No, you know, one, don't just assume the shortest shortcut just because everybody else is using it is like the best option, right? Like there are these automation tools that are coming out, like, and that's getting beyond like AI automation where it's just spanning out like all of the email. You know what? Like almost none of it is relevant that I get. All these people are using the same tools and they're sending a bunch of irrelevant dribble with their tools. And so they may occasionally catch the right person, but it's by pure chance. But you could also not choose that. You could actually choose something that you're still leveraging the AI, but again, keeping the human as a part of it right now and doing a really, really good job. So you get to make a choice. Like it's not just predetermined. Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean you have to do it. And you could have 100 people using ChatGPT to create that dribble that is awful, that is generic, that comes out really awful. And then you could have one marketer that actually knows what they're doing with it, creating the most amazing, engaging, highly phenomenal content you've ever seen with it. Same exact tool, but they understand that one person understands how do I actually use what this tool can do, not to create the mindless dribble, but to actually create the content that is really good.
Now we are getting into the nuts and bolts, the meats, or the beef, as Ralph usually names it. So in times where, like these, where more needs to be done with less, means everybody and their dogs is talking about efficiency and efficiency only. How do you convince the decision makers to act differently where the vast majority of their competitors apparently quite successfully is doing the wrong thing?
So most companies want to make revenue at the end of the day. That efficiency is to lead to higher profit margins and revenue. So what you've got to be able to do is convince them, like show them that the path to revenue is high quality combined, or not even the path to revenue is high quality targeted marketing that's really speaking to your customers and meeting the right customer where they are when they're ready to spend, right? And bringing them through that process. That's going to get you revenue. The higher profit on that is keeping your costs to do it, which is where the efficiency comes in. So what you need to show them is that you understand how to use AI for both at the same time. Most people are looking at AI as this trade-off of like, I'm getting efficiency and accepting the decrease in quality. Where the people who really get it, the ones who are doing phenomenally incredible things with AI are able to go, I can both dramatically increase my efficiency and my quality simultaneously. If your working with AI is not doing both of those things, then you're not using AI properly. If you like the people who understand the tech can do both at the same time. And if anything, if you're using AI right, it's the same amount of time gets you, even like the same amount of time always gets you a far higher quality output. So then you just can't. So even if you start to move the needle where you spend less time, you're still going to be at a higher baseline quality of output, even with less time. But it may not be as high a quality if you've spent the same amount of time as you would have without AI. But people who really get AI really understand AI is not just about efficiency. It's about simultaneously increasing efficiency and quality, which leads to far higher revenue.
So now the rub is that cost needs to go down. So it means I lay off people and I don't invest into their training because that costs as well. So I don't have the skill level and I don't get the skill levels to properly use this stuff, the technology. So means why are those leaders deciding in a way that actually effectively is detrimental to their business success?
Because they're getting pressure from their boards and their CEOs or whatever to make bad decisions. Those who, like it's, or, like it's forces, they're making decisions for the wrong reasons. They don't understand what they're deciding about. And a lot of these companies that did early AI layoffs are now trying to hire people back because they realize they shouldn't have done that, right? Like that wasn't the path. Now, what I think is going to be very interesting is the people who, like the companies that decided to lay off early and try to replace with AI and made the mistake, I think are going to be at such a severe disadvantage compared to the companies that decided to upskill their current workforces with AI and like really invest in that, and still would be, because now everybody that works for them understands this tech. They're not afraid of it on the layoff. It's not like, oh my God, the AI's going to lay me off. But then as one person leaves, just natural attrition from a company, you don't have to replace them. And so like those workforces are going to end up smaller. Now that's existing companies. There's this whole other sphere where I don't think that most of the world understands what's coming and how many companies are going to seem to appear out of thin air at a really high level, because there's this whole other thing where companies are starting themselves ground up as AI, like not AI companies as in they're providing AI, but companies designed around AI. Because right now, existing companies are figuring out or trying to figure out, how do I bring AI in and make AI work with what I already do? And there's this whole other world that is happening with startups where they're not trying to do that. They're trying to go, how do I build a company to work with AI? And how do I forget everything of how things have always been done and do it AI first? And that'll be a whole crazy paradigm when these companies start appearing out of thin air and you got 1, 2, 3 people doing what 500 or 1,000 used to do, and it seems to have happened overnight.
I think that goes a little further. Let's look a little again at impact and outcomes, results, or emails sent, for example. And if I'm looking at that scalability that this technology has and offers, then real personalization is, let's say, no more that far off. Means we can really micro-target, or marketers can really micro-target, even on, my present mood, my present state. And where should that stop from a marketer's point of view? I mean, this is then very close to propaganda almost. So it's no more influencing, nudging me into a direction, but actually working like the old rancher with the cow, which has a ring in her nose and a leash attached to that, getting led to where the marketer wants me to have. So where's the ethics around it? How should ethic guardrails be built within companies or even within the systems to avoid this?
I'm going to be honest.
now we are.
I mean, I have a huge ethical issue, right? Like I would never do something to that level. But I think marketing has been going this direction more and more and more for decades, right? Like this is not new. It's just that AI is going to be enabling it. And especially when you take the data and the predictive data and you combine it with the personalized generative AI, it's terrifying. Like, to be honest, like as a human, forget being as a marketer, it's fascinating and cool and really interesting.
True, yeah.
As
I love it.
Human, it is absolutely terrifying. And I think that unfortunately in like capitalist societies, the companies that are beholden to their shareholders and their bottom lines and things like that, they're not going to not do it if they can. Because unfortunately, and this, hey, maybe I'm going to just show I have a little bit of like not a real optimistic view on certain parts of capitalism sometimes, as much as I'm a part of it and, you know, I'm very much a capitalist, but like overall companies, when they're systems within the capitalist, they're not going to put guardrails in place that say, don't do that, because that's where they're going to make their money. And unfortunately, the billionaires that pull the strings are not going to let you put those systems in place in most companies. There will be some companies that differentiate themselves by actively promoting they don't participate in those those things, and like that becomes a part of their marketing. But I think this is where we need to be globally having real conversations, and it's going to come down to every country having some like legitimate rules and laws and protections for people around this psychological manipulation that's going to be possible. I just don't have, unfortunately, the faith that the vast majority of companies will put these policies in place themselves. There will be those that do, but for the most part, I think that money is going to be the thing that wins. And I think that if you live in like the EU, you're probably going to be way better off on not getting that manipulation than if you live in other countries, just because of where, you know, the EU is already trying to do data protection and like try to prevent some of these things that have happened, where I don't see, where I live in the US, like I just don't see those protections anytime soon. So I think you as a consumer also need to start getting very aware. You are being manipulated. Like the first thing you need to know is, am I being manipulated right now? And I don't know that hey, we've been there for years, like decades of A/B testing and all of this different stuff online. The algorithms have been brainwashing and manipulating us towards desired behavior for a very long time. Forget the companies, it's the algorithms. But I think we just need to get more and more sophisticated of our understanding of the level.
Thank you. That is exactly what I was jumping into, such as we have been manipulated without AI for decades in a certain way. Now it's easier for people which have unethical ideas, or put it in the positive thinking, that they could honestly, if I am their ideal customer, profile me in a way that I, positively speaking for them, as for me, I feel understood. They get me in a way addicted to go for their not only messaging, but at the end of the day, buying their solution, their services, their products. How in an adoptable or acceptable way can one do this smartly, gentle, with cleverness?
Realistically, we're not actually there yet with the technology, right? So this is the hypothetical fear. I mean, like, we're no more there with the AI right now than we were with like the Facebook ad algorithm, the Google ad algorithm. Like, I mean, it's been there to a degree, A/B testing, like that kind of stuff. But the technology, I think there's a lot more of this hypothetical, it's scary, versus what is really already happening. And the reality is nobody is really, at least in any sphere I've seen, nobody is anywhere near doing this kind of thing with AI right now. Like maybe there are some B2C companies that are out there that have some stuff, but at least in the business to business world, this is not actually a thing that's happening. The AI is not there. And I don't think the AI is there to do what you're talking about yet. Now, Is
We
it
need,
coming? Probably, but it is right now. It's also going to take quite a while for companies to get to the point of really doing it, right? Like these companies are so far behind where the technology actually is that we do have some time to, like ramp up to this. This is not happening today. I think the bigger issues we're seeing on the ethical and like those kind of manipulative things are like AI video that you can't recognize the difference between is it real or is it AI generated, an image that you can't recognize, is it real or is it AI generated, and then how could that be used to manipulate people? Because so like we're seeing really sleazy scammy companies take likenesses of like celebrities and make ads for their products with that person's voice and everything, saying they endorse something. We are there to manipulate that. Very unfortunately, I would not do that. I would never tell anybody how to do that. That piece of manipulation exists. But this like in-depth personal profile that creates content just for you and goes out and serves it to you at all these places and all that is a little bit more on the spectrum of like the fear of where this is going. What happens if, are we going to turn into drones just doing what these companies want because of AI? And it's not really where we are. So if you're not doing that, don't feel like you should. One, I mean, seriously evaluate if you ever should be, but like also the tech is not there to do that yet.
So
so
now you're a B2B specialist.
mhm.
Where where do you see the differences between B2B and B2C market in the adoptions of, well, technologies in general and generative AI in particular, and the value of adopting it?
The value, I think, is universal for marketers, right? Like you building these skills for your longevity of your career is vital. I think in certain ways, B2B is far ahead of the curve.
In
Right.
what
Like I
sense?
think in certain ways, like some of the use
Mm.
cases that are really, really valuable have been more developed earlier as far as the
Mm.
technology to be capable of being used in B2B. So things like really repurposing content in lots of different ways. You take one long form thing, you turn it into lots of different assets. Yes, that can be useful in certain kinds of
Mm.
B2C companies.
Mm.
But at the same time, like tons of B2B companies write really long white papers on their topic and
Mm.
education, and they are able to turn it around, or they do webinars and they're able to turn that
Mm.
into lots of other kinds of content, sales cadences, those kinds of things. So I think for a lot of the things, like it's more written and less visual in a lot of B2B
Mm.
stuff. And so because of that, it's just been a little bit further ahead. Where in B2C, we tend to have more video, we tend to have more, ads, like traditional commercially kind of ads. You have more like specific products that need to be showcased, that kind of thing. And that's just the technology is just starting to get there to be able to like drop your shoes into that video or that image or whatever it is and make it look real. So it's still there. It's still vital on both. It's just, I think that B2B, from what I've seen, has been a little bit ahead. But on the flip side, some of the stuff you could do for B2C, it was so wildly useful because you can be like writing Instagram captions and stuff like that, where it's like you just give it the picture and it can understand all the context and write it, or you can be, having it do some of this stuff in different ways. So it just is very different in some of the uses of what you might do. I mean, obviously I am far more involved on the B2B side, so I can speak a lot more to the adoption.
Is there in B2B marketing and technology fueled in particular, is there a trend of a, let's say, consumerization of the marketing? Because I mean, look at what social media was back then in the early noughts or in the late noughts, with TikTok probably being the epitome now. Lots of businesses understood the value of these suspiciously or suspectedly consumer-oriented sites, tools, technologies, to use that more and more for B2B activities for B2B marketing,
Mhm.
using the rationale that after all, I'm not advertising to a business, I'm advertising to Nicole, to Thomas, to Ralph,
Right.
means to consumers as well. So isn't there a consumerization trend going on in B2B marketing and AI-based B2B marketing as well?
I think there's definitely been a move towards some of the B2C practices moving into B2B for sure. I mean, I think you're seeing a huge rise in the way that companies are using LinkedIn in a lot more of like, I'm marketing to an individual, even though I'm selling something for a company. You see a little bit, it's for smaller businesses, you see a little targeting on like TikTok or other platforms. I think that the vast majority of B2B social is still LinkedIn, unless your business you're targeting is a very small business, in which case you do see the TikTok stuff and Instagram and that. But and then one of the other big rises I'm seeing is like influencer marketing, right? So that's kind of been like a reserved as a B2C practice. And I see that now rising a lot in B2B. Now, I don't think most B2B companies have any idea how to do it well. And so that's been kind of interesting to watch. If you like kind of cock your head to the side and you're like, did you think that was going to work? Like they don't have the same understanding that B2C has around how to do creator marketing and influencer marketing, but they're definitely starting to try. And so that's been really interesting.
I mean, influencer marketing in general is in B2B on the rise as well again.
Oh,
After
yeah.
it went down. So and now let's combine that a little with AI. So and TikTok, my favorite
Yeah. Love TikTok.
bashing site. No, I hate it. I think the world would be better off without. But
my mental health definitely works.
if I see well highly paid humans doing the bidding of businesses by more or less hidden or openly placing their products, and I see the advent of video technologies that you also alluded to a little earlier too. So I don't need those again. So and then I have all of the sudden I have my virtual influencer, of which we already have a couple of, a good number actually, more than a couple, that have well more followers than I dare to count.
Yeah.
So in how far is that the, let's say, well, helpful after all, because you're also saying that they don't really know how to do this.
So I'm not talking, I haven't seen anybody doing like virtual influencers, like they're making AI influencers for B2B. I know there's a little of that happening for B2C. I haven't personally seen these like imaginary humans that B2B companies are creating. I mean, they may exist, but people are not broadcasting it if they're doing that at all. What I'm seeing that they're doing a really bad job of is like leveraging people who have a following on business networks, or like, you know, they have a big following of like real people. Like people like, you know, somebody like me, I get people emailing me every day trying to pay me to promote their products. And so like, and I'm not like a massive influencer, but I have almost 15,000 followers on LinkedIn. So, I mean, like I have a decent sized following, enough that I am getting, and I have a highly influential, like my network is largely CMOs at decent sized companies. I have a lot of people in the VC space. So there's a lot of people who want to get in front of the kind of people who follow me. So there's like, you know, there's a good number of people on LinkedIn that have 10, 15, 20, 30,000 followers. And that's where I'm seeing B2B companies trying to get in there. And they're not really, they should be using AI to help strategize how they're doing this, but they're not. So they just are like, it's the same issue. Like they're using AI, I think, to do like to identify people and reach out to them. And they're doing such a bad job because it's like completely missing the mark of understanding this, like totally diverse. But it is a really interesting method of advertising in the new world that, you know, that is a form of advertising to reach out to these influencers and stuff. But in B2B, I think they're trying to adopt this B2B strategy, B2C strategy. It's just so far, I'm not seeing it hitting the mark from what I have seen.
How do you differentiate there between advertising that's more geared towards becoming known, so a share of mind, basically brand building,
Mhm.
versus more transactionally oriented marketing or advertising?
So I think that's part of what companies have got to figure out is who are you tapping as far as influencers? And this is again, like the AI can help you strategize the different prongs of an influencer strategy to do something like this. But you could be doing it for brand awareness, just sharing the product, have somebody talking about you, talking about how they love it. Or then there's like the influencers that are like, here's my coupon code for this. Go and sign up right now, which is a little bit more direct revenue side of trying to do the advertising, where you can even track the coupon codes and see the revenue generated and continue to pay or pay by the order or whatever it is. I am by no means an expert in influencer marketing. I've done a bit. I did a bit in my previous life on the B2C side. And I am more now targeted by people trying to get me to sell their products as an influencer now. So I see it from the opposite perspective these days.
Okay, just turning it around once more. So now there is this supposedly AI-generated advertisement going on. May it be a video or just an image or a text, something informative like a blog or something written, how can I, as the recipient, be sure that this is trustworthy at all? I mean, starting with that it's coming from Nicole,
Right.
who signed it, as opposed to Ralph, who pretends to be Nicole.
Right. I mean, I think we are at a point as a consumer where you need to be a whole lot more discerning about everything that you consume, right? Like you cannot assume any video you see is real. You cannot assume any photo you see is real. And this is like step back from advertising for a second or marketing. This is just like a law for life now. Like I am at the point now where if I see a news story on TikTok or Blue Sky or any platform or LinkedIn or anywhere, I know I don't care if there is a video. I don't care if there is images. I am going to go verify by a trusted, like some type of an organization that I know vets this stuff. I need a credible source. I'm not going to assume just because somebody posted a video that it's definitely true. I need to know who is the source of this information. Did the AP say it? Did Reuters say it? Did whatever? So like that's just life baseline at this point. The misinformation, most people do not comprehend where we really are, and our brains are so used to thinking if it's a video or an image, it's real. When it comes to marketing content, I think the way to verify that is who is the source, right? Like, is the source, like vet the companies before you just give them your money. Don't go just like, randomly decide I'm going to give this random company I saw an ad for a video for my money, because they could very easily. I actually was on TikTok and I stopped using TikTok like for marketing because so many people were stealing my content, and like in the links in their profile, they were putting like scam links, right? Like they were trying to scam people using my content. I was like, I'm not playing this game, right? LinkedIn verifies your identity. So on LinkedIn, I am who I am. They've checked my ID. Nobody can just rip me off on LinkedIn. But TikTok, that was a huge risk, right? Yeah. So you as a consumer need to check, is the company really real? And then you've got to decide, if you're seeing a video, do you care if it was AI, right? Like if the message was the same, human or AI delivering it, does it even matter? For most things, to be honest, it probably doesn't matter if that marketing message was an AI avatar or a human. If the product is the product and you want it, certain things you got to go, don't assume it's real. And also, like, does it matter? And then if it does matter, then you could dig deeper if you care. AI generated writing, I think that we're going to laugh that anybody ever even cared. To be honest, I think that that's something that we're already getting to the point. Like, I think that's more like fear of your job, you want to police other people because you don't like that they know how to use AI and you want to claim that the human writer is better, right? More than, I just don't think people are going to care in the long term. I think it's just becoming so normalized. But when it comes to images and videos, like, do you care if that product was really in that setting with that? Does that prove anything to you, or is it just something that entertains you? And you just got to start making those discerning decisions about whatever you see and weighing out, does it matter, is it relevant, and then make those choices.
Wow.
It's a lot.
So, yeah, it's a lot, and well, the time is gone.
I know. We
That's
do.
that leads me to my outro. Basically, we are stopping usually with what we call the famous last words, which doesn't mean that we terminate our guest, but well,
Please don't.
no, we won't. Last statement. So what you covered it to some extent, but summarizing it, what are your top 3 recommendations for businesses to do, to B2B businesses, to optimally leverage generative AI? 3 points.
1, get your team skills training. Do not assume that they just know how to use this. Like, actually get them the training that they need to be able to do it. Otherwise you don't know where they're getting their information or what it is. 2 is create a culture where people are encouraged to experiment and leverage the technology, where it's celebrated, not punished. Because if you don't create the culture where people want to use it, they're never going to use it. And 3 is give your team a core tool, whether that is a paid tool that has business protections to it, whether that is ChatGPT Teams, the Claude business, I think it's Claude Pro is what it's called. It's escaping me the exact tier, but like the paid business Claude, Google Gemini for workspace. One of these tools at the very minimum, get your team access to that and explain that that's the tool they should be using, so you have the data protections around anything that they are doing in that tool, that your company is protected.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That went by, and that's and your audience CRM Convo for today. And thanks a lot. This was more than just good. This was
I'm glad.
really.
I really enjoyed being here. It was a fun
It
conversation.
was amazing. So to our guests, please tune in next week when we are diving into customer service beyond AI, again AI, but not marketing this time, with our guest Graham Robson of CloudSet. That'll be another fun one, I guess. Well, I'm sure of it. See you till then. And
take care.
Take care till next week.
Thank you. This was fun.